Uncover the sinister truth. Spine-chilling tales from 17 years as a haunted monster hunter. The night air felt thick with tension as Lisa hurried through her suburban neighborhood, shadows creeping along the cracked pavement beneath flickering streetlights. Strange whispers seemed to follow her, like ghostly fingers brushing against her skin. She gripped her bag tighter, heart racing, adrenaline pulsing as the legends of the night watchman bubbled in her mind. What if the stories were true? What if he lurked right around the corner, just waiting for her? The moment she stepped into her tiny house, she felt the weight of the night lift, but a gnawing unease clung to her like a shroud. Jamie was fast asleep, his innocent heart untouched by the creeping darkness outside. Yet as she settled down, she couldn't shake his soft, sleepy words. "Mom, there's cool old stuff in the garage." The words hung like a pendulum, ticking away the time until she'd have to confront whatever lay hidden from view. The next evening, propelled by curiosity more than courage, Lisa waded into the depths of the garage. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light slicing through the cracked window. It felt like stepping into a tomb of forgotten memories. She picked up an old pendant, its surface glinting ominously as a chill crawled up her spine. Had it been waiting for her? Stories whispered in the corners of her mind morphed into screams as she flipped over an old diary filled with cryptic symbols and warnings. "Vengeful spirits," it read, "bound to the bloodline. Beware the price of awakening their slumber." Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Night after night, the whispers grew more insistent. Shadows formed, faces lurking just beyond her sight. The neighbors exchanged glances filled with that same fear hardening their features, each one a reminder of the uncertainties in the world. Jamie's fascination with the pendant left her breathless. His innocent giggle morphed into something sinister. "Mom, it talks to me," he said, eyes glistening with that wild curiosity. And when he clutched it tight, she felt her chest tighten like a vice. Then came the nightmares, growing more vivid, pulling them into a shared darkness where the night watchman became a whisper, a soft rustle in the wind, calling Jamie by name. Lisa felt the walls pulse with their dreadful promise as the nights dragged on. Something lurking in the corners of their home, tight and throbbing, threatening to tear apart the fabric of their small family. Something malevolent was down the street, watching, waiting. Every creak of the house was an omen, every gust of wind an invitation. Just when Lisa thought the day couldn't become any darker, something swept through the neighborhood, and with it, the very foundation of her reality began to tremble beneath her feet. The night fell heavier as she prepared for a confrontation that could change everything. A dark face emerging from the shadow, a villain draped in stories. Lisa was on the edge, suspended in dread, teetering closer to the truth. Would she have the strength to protect her son from the growing darkness, or would they both vanish into the night? Lisa sat upright in bed, her pulse thundering in her ears like a warning bell. The weight of the old diary rested on her nightstand, its pages whispering secrets only she could hear. She glanced toward Jamie's room, bathed in an eerie glow, the pendant's light pulsing like a heartbeat. A cold sweat crept over her as she thought of what it might be saying to her son. The air thickened, like a fog creeping in from an unseen source. Just then, a sharp knock on the front door shattered her reverie. Lisa's heart staggered as she shot a glance at the clock. 2:17 a.m. Who could it be at this hour? Trembling, she slipped into her robe and edged closer to the door. "Mom?" Jamie's voice echoed from his room. It was high-pitched and fragile, like the glass of a forgotten window. "Stay put, sweetheart," she whispered, her throat dry as cotton. She cursed the tendrils of fear wrapping around her heart, urging her to flee. Instead, she flicked on the porch light before cautiously opening the door. There stood Mrs. Thompson from across the street, her expression twisted with terror. Shadows danced in her eyes. You need to come outside. Now. What's wrong? Something's happening. In the neighborhood. It's not safe. Lisa felt the weight of dread settle deep in her bones. She glanced back toward Jamie's room, then back to Mrs. Thompson, who looked ready to bolt. With resolve that surprised even her, Lisa nodded and stepped onto the porch. What do you mean? I heard sounds like cries. Screams. Lisa. There was a shaking in her voice, an urgency that made Lisa's skin prickle. The night was alive with the soft rustling of leaves, an unsettling echo of the storm brewing in her gut. What did it sound like? Like children's voices calling for help. The words struck her like a jolt of electricity. Jamie, before she knew it, Lisa was running back inside. She burst into Jamie's room, heart in her throat. But he was gone. The bedclothes lay askew, and the pendant hung swinging eerily from the dusty bookshelf. Fear clawed at her insides as shadows stretched in the corners, dark fingers inching forward. Jamie! She called out, panic gnawing at her throat. Silence wrapped around the house like a vice squeezing. Then she heard it, soft at first but growing in intensity, the whispers. They were rising from the garage. Fear clutched at her like an old friend. She had ignored the signs for too long. Now the call of the pendant must have led him there, gripping the staircase railing. She fought the urge to flee. Each step closer to the garage felt like a step deeper into a nightmare. The whispers swirled around her, wrapping tighter, promising secrets but demanding a price. She reached the door, the wood warped and heavy beneath her trembling fingers. The whispers escalated into a cacophony, piercing her ears. What could it do to Jamie? Would it take him from her, like so many before? With a push that felt like the weight of the world behind it, she swung the door open, revealing darkness so deep it seemed alive. Jamie! She shouted again, her voice cracking. The world beyond the door held a pull that seduced, an unknown glimmer just out of sight that promised hope or despair. She stepped inside, shadow swallowing her whole, the door creaking ominously behind her. And then she heard it, an eerie giggle, familiar yet twisted, creeping like an ivy around her heart. Mom, I'm here. But the way he spoke the words chilled her blood. It was as if he was no longer alone. What lay ahead might be the very end of everything she knew. And just then, a figure flickered in the shadows, freezing her breath in her chest. She turned toward it, terror gripping her heart as the promise of deeper darkness stared right back at her. Was it too late to save her son? In that moment, Lisa knew one thing for sure. The night watchman had awakened. What horrors awaited her in that engulfing dark? The darkness inside the garage was thick, like a blanket suffocating all hope. Lisa's heart raced as she strained to listen for Jamie, but the shadows seemed to absorb sound, twisting her desperation into a heavy silence that wrapped around her. Jamie? She whispered, fear slipping into her voice. The giggle echoed again, eerily devoid of innocence, weaving through the shadows until it pricked at her mind like a thorn. Something about it twisted in her gut. It was as if the laugh was mocking her, daring her to take another step. Suddenly, the creeping darkness shifted. Flickers of illumination darted toward the rusted bike near the far wall. Shadows spun and revolved, bending to some unseen force. Lisa hesitated, then stepped forward, her foot crunching on an unseen piece of glass that shattered the stillness around her. She flinched, her pulse thundering louder than the shattering noise. I'm coming, Jamie, she shouted, more determined now, fighting down the panic surging in her throat. But then she heard it, the voice again, mischievous and coated in something sinister. Come play with us, Mommy? The remnants of her maternal instinct collided with the awareness that whatever lingered in the shadows was not Jamie. It was something else, something dark and twisted that sought to lure her deeper. As she ventured further into the darkness, Lisa felt an icy draft whip around her legs, a whisper of an otherworldly warning. Don't go. Don't look. But the words hung in the air, thick and slippery. Her mind flooded with visions of Jamie's sweet smile. Jamie! She yelled, voice echoing. Suddenly, a flicker of light danced across the wall, revealing a moving silhouette. It was small, hunched, its outline shifting like smoke. Her heart sank as the figure turned, its eyes like two voids sucking in all the light, set in a face that was eerily similar to Jamie's, yet grotesque and twisted, and just like that, it lunged, darting toward her with a speed that sent her heart crashing to her stomach. In a moment of sheer primal fear, she stumbled back, falling into darkness. The figure's laughter was haunting, reverberating against the walls of the garage and merging with her own cries of terror. Lisa scrambled to her feet, her breath ragged. "Jamie, where are you?" she cried out, searching the shadows frantically. The laughter faded for an instant, replaced by a low, growling whisper that caressed her ear. "You'll never find him." Her throat tightened, grief and horror combining into a molten knot. Steeling herself, she mustered every ounce of courage. "I will find him," she shouted defiantly. The air around her crackled with energy, shadows retreating as if they understood her resolve. For a fleeting moment, there was a glimmer of light, a glimpse of Jamie's bedroom, the pendant swinging from the shelf. But just as quickly, it vanished, leaving her enveloped in a darkness thick enough to drown in. Spurred by desperation, she raced forward, weaving through wrecked boxes and old tools, each step heavy with dread. Laughter rang out again, no longer just from one voice, but a chorus of mocking giggles, echoing like a swarm of tortured souls. "Join us! Join us!" they taunted, growing louder, jagged edges of sound slicing her resolve. "No!" Lisa yelled, anger lighting a spark that ignited her fight. She gripped the edges of an old table, feeling the cool splinters bite into her skin. With a primal scream, she hurled it aside, scattering shadows like leaves in a storm. And then she saw it, a small figure crouched in the corner, Jamie's form illuminated by a sliver of light breaking through the garage door. His eyes were vacant, his smile twisted in a way that made her blood run cold. "Mommy? Come play with me," he beckoned in that same unnatural tone, the shadows behind him thickening like a tide ready to sweep her away. Lisa felt her resolve falter, terror clawing at her heart as she took a step toward him, hesitating. Was this really her son? The whispers in the dark wrapped around her again, wrapping her in fear. What had Jamie become? And as she reached for him, the shadows stirred, and something stirred behind her. An ice-cold breath grazed her neck, a presence looming and ready to pounce. Was this the moment she would lose everything? In the suffocating darkness, the night watchman's laughter echoed an answer, and something even more sinister prepared to reveal itself. The shadows writhed, drawing closer as Lisa's heart rate spiked. She felt the ground shift beneath her, the air thickening with an unnatural weight that pressed down on her chest. That twisted smile on the figure before her felt like a noose tightening around her neck. "Jamie!" she cried again, desperation clawing at her throat, but her voice barely pierced the overwhelming hush of the garage. The laughter hung in the air, taut, mocking, filled with something far worse than mere playfulness. It was tainted, drenched in a vile grin, as if the darkness itself was reveling in her fear. She took another cautious step forward. Dim light flickered in and out, her resolve blurring. The figure remained rooted, its gaze piercing her soul. The resemblance to Jamie tugged painfully at her heart, but every instinct screamed for her to turn away. A soft rustle came from her left, a quick shift of the shadows, and Lisa spun to find an old trunk blocking the path. A fleeting thought rattled in her mind. It felt like something was trapped inside. A shrill scream threatened to escape, but she bit it back. Must stay focused, she reminded herself, pushing against the surging tide of dread. With a surprising burst of courage, she dashed toward the trunk. Perhaps it held clues, remnants long abandoned by time that could point her way to Jamie, or at least to the truth. She threw her weight against the heavy lid, feeling sharp, uneven edges dig into her palms as she forced it open. A swarm of images flooded her mind, moments with Jamie, the comfort of his laughter, the silent promises of safety in their world. But the chest revealed something different, something foul. Old toys lay scattered, their forms twisted and darkened, coated in a thin layer of dust that felt alive, rippling with the shadows. The giggles morphed into monstrous shrieks, as if stitched together by pure malevolence. Playtime is our time. A voice screamed, rising above the cacophony. In a daze, she felt fingers cold and clammy grasp her shoulder, and like a switch flipped, the shadows surged forward. She could feel their jagged edges prick at her skin. Lisa stumbled back, falling hard against the trunk. It slammed shut with a force that made her jump, as if it didn't want her to see what lay within. The shadows gathered, churning and swirling around her, closing her off from the faint light that had given her hope. "Join us, Mommy." The voice now came from every direction, intertwining with the laughter until it became a maddening chorus that eroded her sanity. Panic clawed at her throat. She could feel the presence behind her, the entity, the one that the laughter belonged to, coiling tighter around her in a predatory embrace. With trembling hands, she fished for whatever she could find, ripping through the maladies of her surroundings. Anything to escape this nightmare. Her fingers brushed against a familiar object. She pulled it into the dim light, revealing an old, rusted toy truck. Its paint was flecked with grime, darkened and scratched, but it felt warm against her skin. Jamie. The name escaped her lips in a pleading whisper. She held the toy as a shield, a gesture of love stitched in desperation. But the shadows closed in around her, whispering of loss, of abandonment, of the sweet boy whose laughter had become a weapon of chaos. What if Jamie was trapped like those ghosts in the trunk? What if the entity had taken him and twisted him? The shadows twitched, pressing against her, urging her to succumb to despair. Her mind raced. Could she play their game? Could she outsmart the darkness? Just as the specter behind her lunged, teeth bared, she closed her eyes tight, clutching the truck with all her might. A rush of memories flooded back, each laugh, each hug, each moment filled with love. Suddenly, the darkness paused, and for a heartbeat, the laughter faltered. Lisa opened her eyes, determination hardening within her. "No more games," she screamed, thrusting the toy truck forward. And then silence. But even as her heart surged with renewed hope, shadows shifted. Ominously, an unpleasing shift in the air. Had she truly broken their hold? Or had she awakened something far worse, or simply drawn its attention? In the depths of the darkness, a deep rumble began to build, and she realized their laughter was only the beginning. The silence stretched, a taut wire ready to snap. Lisa stood frozen, the weight of the toy truck heavy in her hand. The swirling darkness around her seemed momentarily bewildered, hesitant, as if considering her defiance. But then it surged forward once more, ravenous and angry, flickering like the dying light above. A guttural growl echoed through the garage, sending a chill cascading down her spine. "You think you can play with us?" it taunted, the voice now low and serpentine. "You think love will save you?" Her breath quickened. She knew she had to act, but the fear clawing at her insides screamed for her to run, to find safety from this unfathomable horror. With every ounce of courage, she tightened her grip on the truck and stumbled backward, nearly tripping over debris as the shadows lunged. "Jamie!" she cried again, her voice a mixture of fury and desperation. "I'm coming for you." The shadows answered her with a chilling chorus, a cacophony of shrieks that resonated through the grime-riddled air. Lisa forced herself to pivot, searching for an exit, her heart pounding like a drum in a chorus of despair. The trunk loomed menacingly behind, and she felt something inside it stir, something alive, battling for release. With quickened steps, she moved towards the edge of the garage. A flicker of light caught her eye, an opening, a sliver of freedom, perhaps. But as she approached, a figure stepped into the dimness. A tall, distorted silhouette, drenched in shadows, blocking her way. The figure's head was a grotesque shape, contorted in what she could only describe as mockery. "Lost your way?" it whispered, voice dripping with malice. The light flickered again, revealing its hollow eyes, blacker than the absent light around them, and Lisa felt bile rise in her throat. "Let me through," she shouted, trying to hold her ground. The entity chuckled, a sound twisted with dark delight, and the air thickened, making it hard to breathe. "Not until you play our game." Before she could respond, The shadows lunged toward her, tendrils that snaked around her wrists and ankles like vicious serpents. Lisa fought against the binding grasp, desperation igniting a fire within her. "Let go," she shouted, thrashing against the suffocating hold. The laughter from all directions mixed with something far more sinister. The chorus turned to whispers, taunting her with truths she didn't want to face. "Did you not hear him?" they hissed. "Did you forget the promises you made?" Images flooded her mind, visions of Jamie's face, the last moments before he vanished, the darkness that had engulfed them both. Shadows settled deep within her, entwining with her memories, and she cried out in despair, "No, I won't lose him." Brightness erupted from the toy truck, a flash of warmth as the old metal sang in resonance with her heart. She pried it free of the entangling shadows and thrust it forward, feeling its power spark anew. For a moment, it felt like a connection to Jamie, a bridge that could draw him back from the abyss. "Get away from me," she screamed, and to her surprise, the dark figure flinched. The shadows slackened, their stranglehold faltering as light poured from the truck, breaking the suffocating spell of darkness. But just beyond that fractured light, the deeper shadows pulsated, undulating like a wounded beast. With a single glance back, her heartbeat stuttered. The trunk was wide open now, and she caught a glimpse of the frayed edges of reality within, a glimpse of what had been hidden. "Mommy, why did you leave me?" came Jamie's voice, soft and broken. Lisa gasped. "A trap. A lure." "Jamie, no." Then everything exploded into chaos, as the shadows surged to reclaim their lost prey, and the darkness closed back in, deadlier than before. Now Lisa was faced with a choice that could seal their fates forever. Would she step into the darkness to save Jamie, or fight to remain in the flickering light? The answer lay in the churning depths before her, and as she hesitated, a scream filled the air. A scream that belonged to no one she knew, yet echoed like a warning through her very soul. Was it too late? Would she find the strength to confront the nightmares? Or would Jamie's call become a haunting refrain that would drag her, too, into oblivion? The shadows crashed against Lisa, a relentless wave of fear that shattered her resolve. She could feel their icy claws, crawling up her arms and entwining around her legs like sinister vines. Panic surged through her, driving her instincts to save Jamie. The voices, the echoes of her broken promises, twisted around her, demanding she join the darkness. "Jamie!" she screamed, forcing the name through her clenched throat. The grip of the shadows shifted slightly, almost as if considering her impending choice. The light from the toy truck flickered, dimming under the oppressive weight of the encroaching darkness. "Stay with us," the distorted figure whispered, and it stepped closer, its shadow stretching like a grotesque hand reaching for her heart. In that moment, the line between reality and the nightmare began to blur. She could see it clearly now, the trunk behind her, opened wide, the pulsing darkness beckoning like a desperate lover. She inhaled sharply. Jamie's voice had sounded so real, so heartbreakingly lost. Could he truly be inside that void, trapped among the haunting memories? "Mommy, please, I'm scared." The words hit her like a hammer. Lisa's chest constricted as she met the piercing gaze of the figure, swirling around her like a storm bathed in shadows. Its hollow eyes glinted with twisted glee. "Make your choice," it hissed, the sound slithering through her mind, wrapping around her heart. "The light can't save you, there's only one way to find him." With trembling hands, she raised the toy truck, praying the connection could shatter the deceitful lure of the shadows. A surge of warmth radiated from the tiny vehicle, wrapping around her in a protective cocoon. For a fleeting moment, the darkness flinched. But that moment was a breath, and then it was gone. No! The shadows lunged forward, writhing like living creatures, consuming the light, leaving only a chilling void. The debilitating weight of their despair pressed hard against her. Lisa didn't know how long she could hold onto the fleeting warmth of the truck. "Jamie!" she cried again, her voice rising above the chaos, desperate for a connection that seemed just out of reach. "Hold on. I'm coming." But the ground beneath her began to tremble, and the air thickened, transforming into a suffocating fog of panic. Her heart raced, each beat an echo of her resolve, pushing her toward the open trunk, where Jamie lingered, calling for her, begging her. A flicker of hesitation tore through her thoughts. Would stepping into that terrifying darkness truly lead her to save her son? Or was it a path that would lead them both into an endless nightmare? The whispers grew louder, confusing, taunting. You could be free, you could live without him. Join us. Lisa's resolve wavered, and she hesitated, suspended between the glimmering hope of her light and the seductive promises of the unknown. A single tear slid down her cheek, the warmth of it setting her resolve on a fragile edge. Could this be the end point? With one final, frantic breath, Lisa dashed toward the trunk, the shadows hissing in fury, their tendrils snapping at her heels. She reached up, heart hammering, hands trembling as she grasped the edge. But before she could leap into the darkness, a chilling realization seized her. What if Jamie was not just trapped inside? What if he had become part of the darkness itself? The air cracked around her with a deafening silence, and in that breath-stopping moment, fear tightened its grip. "Mommy, come play with me." Lisa's legs faltered, and she felt the ground beneath her give way, her resolve screaming against the rising tide of shadows. What lay beyond the threshold? Would she find Jamie in the dark? Or would she lose herself forever? The darkness rushed at her, and she teetered on the edge, caught between the terrifying unknown and the last flicker of hope. The choice was under siege. Dread clung to her, the shadows wailing around her as she prepared to make the ultimate leap. Would she save her child or succumb to the darkness? And then the world spiraled into an abyss. The darkness engulfed Lisa, a bottomless pit of terror swallowing her whole. She felt her feet leave the ground, the pull of the abyss dragging her deeper into a fathomless void. The whispers clawed at her mind, each sound fracturing her thoughts, urging her to abandon all hope, to drown in despair. But just as the shadows tightened their grip, the toy truck flared to life, casting a flicker of warm light through the dark abyss. Felt like a beacon, a flotation device thrown into raging waters. Lisa grasped it tightly, feeling the warmth pulse in her palm. "Jamie, I'm coming," she panted, forcing the words out through her fear, summoning the strength from deep within her. Suddenly, the darkness shifted. A heady blend of desperation and rage surged from the void. Shapes flickered and danced in the corners of her sight, twisted faces mouthing unrecognizable horrors. They swarmed around her, drawing closer, their breath a foul caress against her skin. She could feel their eyes, unblinking and cold, watching, waiting. "Foolish girl," a voice rasped. It belonged to the figure, the one who had whispered to her. "You cannot save him. He is ours." A wave of dread washed over her. "No," she cried. "Yes, my son. You can't have him." The shadows recoiled, then surged toward her. A howling chorus filled the air, the cries morphing into Jamie's voice, distorted by pain and fear. "Mommy, I'm scared. Help me. Jamie." Lisa shouted, the desperation raw in her throat. She clutched the toy truck, its glow flickering like a candle in a storm. Motivated by a wild, fierce love, she surged forward into the darkness, the light from the truck illuminating a path. The trunk loomed before her, and as she moved closer, she could see the faint outline of Jamie's face, pale and sunken, floating in the depths. "Mommy, please," he wailed, his hands reaching out as though they could bridge the growing chasm between them. "Hold on, baby," she screamed, fighting back the panic that threatened to paralyze her. She had to resist the shadowy tendrils snaking around her legs, pulling her back, and snaring her like a web. Desperation clawing at her chest, she focused on Jamie's frightened face. She steeled herself and took a deep, trembling breath, diving forward into the blackness, light from her truck spiraling into the void. The world shrieked as shadows writhed, coiling around her like a serpent. Pain lanced through her limbs, but she pushed through the searing agony. Jamie's face grew clearer, anguish etched across it, pulling her deeper into the darkness. Suddenly, an explosion of coldness enveloped her, and she seemed to slip through a barrier. The air crackled, and she found herself standing in a nightmarish landscape, a twisted reflection of her reality. The sky was blood-red, and the ground was strewn with shattered memories, a battlefield of lost hopes. "Mommy?" Jamie's voice echoed, distant but clear. She scanned the area, heart racing, instinctively knowing that she was getting closer. But something lurked in the shadows. A chilling laugh broke the oppressive silence, sending icy fingers racing down her spine. "Foolish mortal," it spat. "You don't realize what you're stepping into. You want to save him? You'll both pay the price." Fear surged again, a clenching fist around her heart. What would it cost her? What price was too great? In that moment, the ground trembled beneath her feet, splitting open to reveal a dark chasm filled with writhing shadows, eager to swallow her whole. The flickering light from the toy truck faltered, leaving her in the grasp of that endlessly terrifying darkness. Could she truly fight her way through this nightmare? Could she save Jamie without losing herself? And in that fractured moment, she felt Jamie's hand graze her own, weak and trembling, before slipping away into the abyss. Was it possible they were both already doomed? The darkness swirled closer, pressing in, and she realized she was running out of time. The shadows lunged at Lisa, hungry for her fear. Each tendril scraped against her skin, cold and raw, aiming to drag her deeper into despair. Yet, she fought back, the flickering light of the toy truck illuminating the surrounding darkness in erratic pulses. It felt like a heartbeat, each thump matching the frantic rhythm of her own heart. "Jamie!" She screamed again, her voice slicing through the oppressive atmosphere. But the only answer was the echo of her own desperation. Suddenly, the air shifted, thickening like a heavy fog. From the shadows, shadowy figures emerged, twisting and writhing with a grotesque elegance. There were not just whispers now. There were voices mocking, taunting, weaving a web of dread around her heart. "You think love can save you?" They hissed in unison, their breath reeking of decay. "You are all alone." Panic surged. No, she refused to yield to their lies. Summoning every ounce of courage, she steadied the toy truck, its light now a fierce beacon against the encroaching darkness. "I will not leave my son," Lisa shouted defiantly, her words echoing through the eerie landscape. And just like that, the ground shifted. It tremored and cracked, sending splinters of jagged earth breaking apart. A low rumble filled the air as more shadows unfurled into the world, growing in number as they formed grotesque shapes, claws of darkness reaching for her. "Foolish mother," the haunting voice crooned, a malicious edge creeping into its tone. "You dive into the abyss, thinking you can pull him out. But the stronger your light shines, the darker the depths you'll plunge." Lisa felt the biting chill of dread clawing at her resolve. Yet, the thought of Jamie kept her anchored. She could not give in. Not now. Suddenly, she caught a flicker of movement just beyond the reach of her light. It was Jamie. Glimpses of his figure appeared and disappeared like a fragmenting dream. His eyes, wide and pleading, searched for her. "Mommy, help me," he cried again, his voice a desperate plea that reverberated in her core. "Hold on, baby. I'm coming," she called, her heart racing as she launched herself toward the sound. But as she made her way through the shifting terrain, the shadows grew more aggressive. They lashed out, claws hitting her like icy daggers. She felt their weight, pushing against her chest, trying to extinguish her will. Then, she froze. A split-second realization struck her. There in the shadows, coiling around Jamie, was the form of the figure that had haunted her from the start, the one that whispered promises of despair. It stood with its back to her, silhouetted against the eerie red sky, and the urge to scream overtook her. But instead, she pushed through the pain, forcing her legs to move. She had only seconds before she lost him again. "Leave him alone," she shouted, a desperate scream drowned among the cacophony of shadows. The figure turned slowly, its eyes glowing with a sinister light, a cruel smile twisting its lips. "You're too late, dear mother," it said, voice silky and malevolent. "He is already ours." With a surge of rage, Lisa lunged forward, fueled by determination. "No!" she roared, the light from the toy truck exploding in intensity, scattering the shadows momentarily. But the moment was fleeting. The darkness roared back, absorbing the light, making it weaker by the second. The sinister figure began to dissolve into swirling tendrils, leaving only a haunting laugh behind, and then silence. The landscape changed again. The ground beneath her began to dissipate, and Lisa felt the desperate pull of gravity urging her toward the darkness below. Jamie's face faded from view once more, swallowed by the encroaching gloom, and her heart shattered. Jamie! But now, not just fear filled the void, something else slithered in. A whisper settled deep inside her mind, planting seeds of doubt and despair. "Your light won't save him," it taunted. "This is only the beginning." Lisa clung to the flickering light, willing it to grow stronger, to push back the shadows that threatened to devour her. But despair crept in, anchoring her. Where she stood, heart pounding with unfathomable terror. What else awaited her in this nightmare? "Please, Jamie," she whispered, voice cracking under the weight of her fear. "I'm coming for you." But in that infinite void, darkness closed in tighter. And she felt herself slipping away. Was this horror ever going to end? The pull of darkness gripped Lisa tighter, each second drawing her deeper into despair's embrace. Images of Jamie's face flickered in her mind like a faulty film reel, sparkling eyes now dulled by fear. She felt the coldness seep into her bones, suffocating her hope. "Don't let go," she pleaded to herself, yet the shadows closed in like a noose. Every breath felt laborious, the air thick with dread. The whispers surrounded her, now slithering not just in her ears, but piercing through her very core. "You'll never reach him. You're lost forever." With maddening desperation, Lisa raised the toy truck higher, its light flickering wildly, fighting against the encroaching night. Shadows recoiled, hissing as the beam cut through their gloom. But it wasn't enough. The dark still tugged at her, hungry and insatiable. She stumbled forward, fighting the overwhelming urge to surrender. Her eyes darted across the ever-shifting landscape. Was that a way out, or only more of the same nightmare? The terrain twisted, forming a labyrinth of despair and anguish. She could hear a distant echo of Jamie calling for her, a flicker of sound that sent shards of hope through her heart. "Mommy!" It was faint, too faint. Each cry seemed to erode further into the void as if swallowed whole. Lisa's heart raced, her feet driven by instinct, yearning to reach that sound once more. But the ground lurched beneath her. She slipped, her feet sliding over jagged edges. An icy wind howled, piercing through her coat, chilling her flesh. She stumbled, crashing onto the rough earth, the toy truck clattering away, its light flickering dangerously. Get up, she screamed at herself, refusing to give in. Panic electrified her veins. Fingers fumbled to retrieve the truck, and when she retrieved it, the tendrils of darkness thrashed against the beam, struggling to extinguish her light. The laughter returned, echoing from every corner, the shadows mocking her futile struggle. "You think you can save him? You're just prolonging the inevitable." With a defiant scream, she swung the light like a sword. "Stay back." The howling rose to a fever pitch, a cacophony of despair intertwining with her cries. Suddenly, a new voice broke through, deeper and more resonant. "Lisa," it slithered around her like smoke, wrapping itself around her heart. "Why do you fight? Your son is gone. Embrace the darkness. It will set you free." "No," she gasped, fighting tears. "I will not lose him." As if in response, the shadows recoiled, forming a shape, a visage. The figure of a man emerged, faceless but familiar. A phantom of memories long buried. Her own father? No, it couldn't be. The shadows shifted and morphed, tightening their grip, blending figures in and out of focus. "Join us, Lisa," he urged, voice filled with a smooth, sickly sweetness. "We will be together again. You've suffered too long in the light." The light from the truck flickered, dimming under the weight of his words. She could feel the very essence of her determination waning. Still, A flicker of Jamie's face sparked in her mind, innocent and bright. No, I have to save him. With newfound strength, she thrust the truck forward, the light flaring anew, harsh against the darkness. I will fight for him. At that moment, the laughter turned guttural, a sound that clawed at her insides. Shadows screamed as the light blazed, illuminating the path ahead. But the struggle was only beginning. And just as abruptly, the light extinguished, plunging her into utter darkness. She felt the cold tendrils wrap around her once again, and for a heartbeat, she couldn't tell if the whispers were inside her head or echoing from the shadows. Your son is next, they hissed, the emptiness coiling tighter. Lisa's breath hitched in terror. If she didn't find Jamie soon, what else would she lose? With aching resolve, she whispered into the void, I will find you, Jamie. But would he hear her? And in the depths, shadows shimmered with a sinister promise. The chase had only just begun. Blackness enveloped Lisa like a suffocating blanket, the cold tendrils grasping at her limbs, threatening to take her down into its grasp. But in that moment of despair, she could feel something deep within her stirring a warmth, a flicker of hope igniting her spirit. Grasping the toy truck tightly, she closed her eyes and concentrated on Jamie. You're not lost, baby. I will find you, she shouted, the very act of speaking grounding her against the rising tide of darkness. Suddenly, a piercing wail erupted, echoing through the churning shadows. Mommy, help me. It was Jamie's voice, tense and afraid, woven through the malevolence surrounding them. The sound, achingly familiar, breathed life into her resolve. I'm coming, she screamed, determination erupting from her heart like fire. When she opened her eyes again, the light from the toy truck was brighter than before, illuminating her path. Shadows flinched at its brilliance, momentarily recoiling, allowing her a moment to breath. Something shifted, the landscape around her rearranging itself with every pulse of her heart. As she moved forward, she scanned the maw of darkness all around her. Where are you, Jamie? She called, her voice steady despite her fear, echoing off the twisted structures of despair and the stillness that followed. The shadows began to churn again, and she caught glimpses of Jamie's pale face peering through the void. Mommy, it's so dark, he cried, fear mingling with something else, an allure that seemed to tease at the edges of her mind. Join us, a chorus of whispers taunted. Shut up, Lisa retorted, summoning every ounce of maternal instinct buried within her. The light from the toy truck pulsed with her will, emitting waves of brilliance that pierced through the encroaching shadows. She pushed forward, pushing against the weight of grief pressing heavily against her chest. But as she neared Jamie's tortured form, the shadows churned violently, rearing back like a dark beast poised to strike. Mom, his voice cracked, dissonant with the mere heartache of innocence lost. The rhythmic laughter swelled, echoing around them, always just a breath away. For a moment, tears pooled in her eyes, spilling silently down her cheeks as reality crashed around her. Jamie, listen to me, you have to fight. You are strong, she declared, feeling the tremor beneath her feet as the shadows rippled. I love you, and love is how we get through this. The shadows twisted and shrieked, fluid shapes of despair that recoiled from her words, and it dawned on her. Love was the light in this suffocating dark. The whispering grew louder as she approached Jamie's prison, the whispers clawing at her mind, wrapping curdled memories around her heart. You chose to abandon him, they hissed, slick and vile. You allow the darkness to take what belongs to it. No, she shouted defiantly, fighting through her sorrow. She could see him clearer now, trembling, lost amidst the cloak of shadows, his tiny face alight in fear beneath the mirage of the night watchman. With an instinctual rush, she leapt towards him, the flickering light engulfing them both as she grasped his outstretched hand. Mommy, save me, Jamie wailed, and the world around her shattered into a kaleidoscope of colors, deep black turning to brilliant light. Together, Jamie, she gasped, and in her grasp, she felt the warmth of his spirit, fragile but flickering like a flame. The shadows snarled, rearing up, but the light swirled around them, forcing the darkness back. You'll not take my son. In that moment, the shadows faltered, whispers rising to a shriek as Lisa focused the light of the toy truck. She poured every ounce of love and hope for Jamie into that beam, pushing back the darkness that clutched and clawed at them. "Leave us," she shouted, her voice rising above the cacophony, resonant and powerful. "He is not yours." With all her might, the intensity of the light flared, pushing outward until it burst forth, wrapping them in a golden cocoon. The darkness shrieked, a deafening chorus of anger as the tendrils broke apart, retreating from the might of a mother's love. "No, you cannot escape," they cried, but Lisa wouldn't stop. The ground trembled, shadows recoiling, shrinking against the furious light. With a final push, the shadows split, allowing a path to emerge, a narrow corridor of radiant light. "Let us go, Jamie," she urged, pulling him closer as they raced forward, the echoes of darkness clawing impotently at their heels. As they traversed that final stretch, she felt the air shift, the shadows behind them fading into nothingness. Emerging into the light, they found themselves back in the garage. The confines of darkness dissipated, leaving only the echo of their cries. Lisa dropped to her knees, Jamie clutched tightly in her arms, both sobbing tears of relief and closure. You're safe," she whispered, heart hammering in its soft rhythm. In that moment, the world felt real again, the grind of daylight creeping through the window, the gentle assurances of love binding their souls. Outside, the sun began to rise, bathing everything in resplendent warmth, washing away the remnants of fear. For the first time in what felt like ages, Lisa let out a shaky breath, a breath filled with hope and renewal. Their bond had been tested, but they had also beaten back the shadows together. With Jamie's innocent laughter ringing in her ears once more, Lisa held him close. They had survived the night watchman's hold, and as she looked at her son, she knew their journey hadn't ended. It had only just begun, and in that dawn-lit garage, shadows dissipated, fear retreated, and the grip of darkness was finally broken. Now, don't you dare forget this moment. Go ahead and subscribe immediately to the channel so you won't miss out on the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and flood that comments section with your reactions or theories about the conclusion. You need to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this amazing end. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second. Join the community and help spread the light.